Hey LITVERSE fam, welcome back to the channel where we dive into the world of English literature. Today we are exploring a classic restoration play by John Dryden, All for Love. This is a reimagining of the tragic love story of Antony and Cleopatra, originally told by Shakespeare. But Dryden gives it his own unique twist. Ready to jump in? Let's get started. So, before we jump into John Dryden's All for Love, we should know who is John Dryden. John Dryden was one of the most popular and influential literary figures of the mid-late 17th century in England. He worked for the Republican government during the interregnum, but after the restoration of Charles II to the throne of England in 1660, Dryden became an outspoken supporter of the royalist cause. He also benefited professionally from the restoration because the theatres were reopened after decades of closure. Dryden began writing plays such as Marriage a la Mode on 1673 and All for Love on 1678, which were very popular with audiences. He was known as well for his literary criticisms and satires, for example, essay on dramatic poesy, essay on metaphysics, and many more, including Macflackney on 1670 and Absalom and Achiophel on 1681. A respected and renowned author by the time of his death, Dryden was also England's first poet laureate. So now let's talk about the major and minor characters in All for Love. So first important major character is Antony. At the time of events of All for Love, Antony is renowned Roman general and political leader. Described as emperor of half of the world, he rules Rome with two other politicians, including Octavius. For all his power and prestige, however, he has a fatal weakness, his love for the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. And this choice has involved many sacrifices that he had abandoned his first wife Fulvia and his second wife Octavia along with their children. And for Dryden, Antony's mixed temperament, neither a model of perfect virtue nor altogether wicked, makes him a sympathetic figure. He is not flawless, but neither is he villainous. He is also a romantic hero because he allows himself to be ruled by his passion. Although Antony highly values his honor and reputation, he ultimately chooses his love for Cleopatra above all other considerations, and then he decides to die with her in Egypt, and thus giving up rule of half of the world for love. And now our next important major character is Cleopatra. Cleopatra is the queen of Egypt and the lover of Antony. She is famously beautiful and charismatic and diplomatic as well, and by her own account has received many marriage proposals. There is a documentary video available on Netflix, and if you got any chance, please watch this out. Because there they have very in detail discuss the reign of Cleopatra as the Egyptian queen. And I hope you will enjoy this documentary video on Cleopatra. And now let's move into the third important character, and he is Ventidius. Ventidius is a general in the Roman army and one of Antony's oldest and closest friend. He is fiercely proud, honorable, and eager to fight in war rather than remain in the palace. So the next important character is Dolabella. Like Ventidius, Dolabella is another of Antony's close friends. Although he loved Antony and is very loyal to him as well, their friendship is tested by Dolabella's continuing passion for Cleopatra. Next important character is Alexis. Alexis is Cleopatra's servant and one of her advisors. In the play, he often acts as Cleopatra's messenger to Antony. For instance, he is one who brings Antony Cleopatra's ruby bracelet and persuades him to see her one last time, thus preventing his departure from Egypt. So now let's move into the next important character, Octavius. Octavius is a character who never appears on stage but who nonetheless casts a long shadow. He is Antony's rival for power in Rome and is described as young, ambitious, and strongly competitive in his quest for rule of half the world. And next is Octavia. Octavia is Antony's wife and Octavia's sister. In the play All for Love, Octavia has played a very significant role, but the main play of Shakespeare, Antony and Cleopatra, she got a very small significant role, and this is a contrast. Now let's jump into Charmian. Charmian is one of Cleopatra's maid and she is fiercely loyal to her mistress as demonstrated at the end of the play. Now let's move into the minor characters of the play. So the first minor character would be Iris, who is another one of Cleopatra's maid, and like Charmian, she is very loyal to her at the last of their life. The second important minor characters are Serapion and Myris, and they are the priest of Temple of Isis and a figure of significant political influence at Cleopatra's court. They both are gravely concerned about Roman invasion and the future of Egypt as an independent kingdom. We will see them at the opening scene of All for Love. The last minor character would be Agrippina and Antonia. They are Antony and Octavia's young daughters. Octavia brings them to Cleopatra's palace to see their father. And Antony clearly still loves them, and he is so moved by the sight of them that he temporarily pledged to return to his family. Now let's discuss the story of All for Love. It is a classic restoration drama worth exploring, and your mission is to link all the characters to the plot I have outlined. Good luck with your job. All for Love drama is divided into 5 acts and it includes a dedication, preface, and epilogue. All for Love begins with John Dryden's dedication of the play to an aristocratic patron, Thomas Osborne. He praises Osborne for his loyalty to the crown during the English Civil War. This praise leads Dryden to a larger consideration of the merits of the English constitutional monarchy, which he calls the best form of government in the world. Dryden thinks that all attempts at reform are dangerous, since any rebellion strikes at the root of power, which is obedience. Dryden then writes a preface about the play itself. The story of Antony and Cleopatra has been often told, most famously by William Shakespeare. But Dryden has made some changes. For instance, he has invented new characters and scripted a fictional meeting between Cleopatra and Octavia, Antony's Roman wife. He explains that Antony and Cleopatra are appealing protagonists because they are neither wholly good nor evil. Two priests of the Temple of Isis, Serapion and Myris, observe that there have been several frightening omens in Egypt recently. For instance, the water of the Nile overflowed and left behind monstrous sea creatures. The water of the Nile has its own symbolic significance, and we will look into this too. So, they expresses their fears for the future of their kingdom, since Antony and Cleopatra have recently and disastrously lost the Battle of Actium to Antony's rival for power in Rome, Octavius. Antony has now locked himself away, hoping to cure himself of his love for Cleopatra. His old general Ventidius arrives to try to bring some hope. He tells Antony that he has an army in Lower Syria that is loyal to Antony's cause. However, the army will only fight for Antony if he comes to them. They do not want to fight for Cleopatra in Egypt. In order to claim his army, then Antony will have to leave her. Cleopatra obviously is in despair when she hears that Antony plans to leave her. She sends her eunuch Alexis, who gives Antony a ruby bracelet in the shape of bleeding hearts. Alexis petitions Antony to go see Cleopatra one last time, so that she can fasten the bracelet on his wrist, although Ventidius warns against this. When Cleopatra appears for her audience with Antony, she swoons and protests pathetically that she only wants to die. At this, Antony proclaims that will never abandon the woman who loves him, even if it cost him his life. So several other visitors come to the Egyptian court, like Antony's old friend Dolabella, who is in love with Cleopatra, and Antony's wife Octavia. And Octavia is Antony's Roman wife. And Octavia has also brought their two daughters, Agrippina and Antonia. Octavia tells Antony that she is still loyal to him as a wife despite his abandonment of her. Ventidius and Dolabella urge Antony to abandon Cleopatra and take back Octavia. Octavia tells her daughters to go to their father. At their embrace, Antony is so moved that he tells Octavia he will leave Cleopatra. So Cleopatra again despairs at this news. She encounters Octavia in the palace and the two women exchange insults. Octavia accuses Cleopatra of stealing Antony's wife, children, power, and political standing. Cleopatra says that she has suffered more because Antony has the name of wife to protect her, whereas Cleopatra has lost her crown and reputation for Antony. Meanwhile, Antony asks Dolabella to break the news of his departure to Cleopatra. When Dolabella arrives, Alexis urges Cleopatra to use Dolabella's feeling for her to make Antony jealous. Cleopatra begins flirting with Dolabella very reluctantly, but ultimately Cleopatra is unable to go through with it and confesses that she still loves Antony. Dolabella admires her loyalty and consistency, but it is too late because Ventidius and Octavia observed this scene, and the scene was Dolabella kissing Cleopatra's hand, and they plan to tell Antony because they hope that this will derive a wedge between the lovers for good. So, Ventidius and Octavia brings the news of Cleopatra's infidelity to Antony. This backfires, since Antony becomes frantic with rage and distress. Coming to the realization that Antony still loves Cleopatra and will never love her, Octavia leaves the palace and returns to Octavia's camp. Octavius is Octavia's brother. And meanwhile, Antony rages at Dolabella and banishes him from Egypt. He banishes Cleopatra as well, who begs his forgiveness and leaves, proclaiming that she still loves him. Antony weeps as they part, but orders that they never see each other again. The battle with Octavius continued to go disastrously for the Egyptian. As Antony watches from the roof of the palace, the Egyptian navy surrenders without a fight and joins the Roman forces. Antony becomes convinced that Cleopatra has betrayed him to Octavius. Alexis comes up with another plot, recommending that Cleopatra hide in her monument, which she does. Alexis tells Antony that Cleopatra was so distressed at his suspicion of her that she killed herself. At this news, all the fight goes out of Antony. He explains that all he wants now is to die, since Cleopatra was the jewel that made his life worth living. All his conquest, glory, and honors were merely the ransom he used to buy her love. Now, Antony says, is the time to give up his power, struggle with Octavius, and let the world know whom to obey. Ventidius accepts Antony's desire to die and expresses his wish to go with him, since his own life is not worth living without Antony. Antony then asks Ventidius to kill him first, but Ventidius stabs himself instead. Antony then falls on his sword but misses his heart and begins bleeding profusely. Meanwhile, discovering Alexis' deception, Cleopatra rushes into the room and finds him on the ground. As Antony dies in her arms, he makes her promise to join him soon in the afterlife. Such a love story. Cleopatra dresses herself in her royal robes and seats herself on the throne beside Antony. Her maids Iris and Charmian bring her a poisoned asp that fatally stings her. Cleopatra proclaims that she will die with Antony as his wife, in a bond that no Roman laws will be able to break. As she dies, she challenges Octavius to ever separate them now. Iris and Charmian follow her example and also commit suicide. Serapion bursts into the throne room, leading Alexis in chains. When he sees the bodies, he remarks on how noble Antony and Cleopatra look and expresses the hope that they will live a happier and freer life in heaven than they found on earth. So, this is the complete overview of All for Love, and here are some questions that are often getting asked in our exams, especially masters and bachelors. And in the next video, I will discuss all these answers in detail with the contrast between Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra along with Dryden's All for Love. So very soon we are meeting in our next video, and till then stay tuned with LITVERSE. Thank you.